Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. This time to build. This time to build. This time, this time to build. This time to build. This time to build. This time, power, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 89 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am about midway through my big road trip. Just left St. Louis yesterday. I believe it was yesterday. The days are getting all cloudy to me at this point. Left St. Louis, where I had an amazing time at the showdown. I had a great time working with everyone who came out for the workshops. So thank all of you a ton for coming out. I really love getting to meet new people every single time I go to St. Louis, and it surprises me every time. So thank you. I actually got asked a really interesting question during one of the workshops at Climb So Ill. I was asked if I named the company the Power Company because I was bad at power. And, I make no bones about the fact that power was one of my big weaknesses early on, and it's something I've worked really hard at. And I also am very open to throwing my hat over the fence and letting everyone know my goals, putting them out there. And while that just is coincidence, it was never part of the actual plan, it's a really interesting idea to think about. So I'm just going to pretend it was something subliminal, and that's going to become a factual part of the origin story of Power Company Climbing. So thanks, Tina, if you're listening, for the great question. I thought about it for probably 2 hours of my drive yesterday. My drive, that is, to Columbia, Maryland, which is where I am stationed right now as we speak. And tomorrow begins the Climb Strong Performance Climbing Coach Seminar, where I'll be speaking and coaching. And I'm really excited to see all of the, how the presentations from the other coaches have evolved, and some of the new ones who are new additions to the seminar. Really excited to see those and to get to work with the coaches. That's become such a valuable part of what we do here. From here, I head to Alexandria, Virginia, to Sport Rock. I'll be there all week from Tuesday, April 10th through that Saturday. So if you're in the area, please come out. Please say hello. I would love to meet and to work with that community out there. So while I'm out on the road and I'm traveling, I spend a lot of time just in my car thinking, and I think about these workshops and this seminar and how I can add more value, how I can get the message across better to all the people who are taking the workshops, whether it's climbers, youth athletes, coaches, whatever it might be. And at this Climb Strong Performance Climbing Coach Seminar, I'll be talking about deliberate practice and mindset. And I'm of the opinion that practice is something that somewhere along the line has gotten lost in climbing. It's something that, for lack of a better word, we don't practice anymore. It's just not a regular part of most climbers' sessions. At least not in a really dedicated, intentional sort of way. So in wrestling with these ideas, I was reminded of a really great, wide-ranging conversation that I'd had with my friend Peter Bonamici a couple of years ago. And for some reason, it just never made its way out of the vaults and onto the internet. And I've actually had some requests recently to put this interview out there. And I've had requests because Peter is, he's a really strong climber. And I should use the word good, because he's a really good climber. He's not just a strong climber. There's definitely a difference. And he puts a lot of thought into his climbing, like most of the good climbers do. And he's a living Midwest legend. And the story he told me that stuck in my head was that after he climbed his first V13, he realized he didn't really know how to heel hook, that he'd been doing it wrong. But I'll let him tell you that story.
Someone might give you, it doesn't seem like you're pulling hard enough with your right foot. Like, that's one piece of beta, but a different piece of beta might be, you just need to fire this thing right now.
Power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
Start from the beginning. You gave me this great anecdote about learning to heel hook.
Sure.
As a V13 climber, learning to heel hook.
Hardly a V13 climber. Just
Okay, well,
for
you've
the
climbed,
record. Yes,
yeah.
yeah. I've climbed V13.
Some people would say that's making you a V13 climber.
Well,
Some people would call themselves V14 climber at that point, just because they're trying V14 now and then.
well, I like to think that I'm not some people in that category anyway. But so anyway, we there was this boulder at local area, and somebody had gone ahead and climbed it, underclinging this block, smearing on this other boulder with their feet, climbing this compression feature. And I started trying to climb it with just one of the boulders, just straight squeezing. Honestly,
Because
mostly,
bouldering rules.
yeah, because bouldering rules, and mostly just to prove a point, like, oh, bouldering just uses one boulder, whatever. And it turned out to be like pretty hard. I spent a lot of days trying to climb this pretty terrible boulder, maybe like 15 days or something like that. And so then, season ended and went around to some other areas. And throughout that period, I kind of got in my head, oh, well, if I climb a lot of heel hook problems, maybe I'll be able to do this terrible boulder back in my local area. Maybe I'll get strong enough in my heel and my hamstring, etc. And so I did that and climbed a bunch of terrible heel hook problems. And when, I got back to the project in the spring, I actually realized that I'd been doing it wrong. I moved not my heel, but my left foot. It's a right heel, left foot, to a different position. And that's when I realized that actually by climbing all these bad heel hook problems, I'd gotten better at heel hooking, not stronger at it. Yeah. I ended up doing the boulder really fast, and it was nowhere near as hard as I thought it was. And I just wasn't doing it right. I didn't understand it. But through doing a bunch of terrible problems, I keep saying they're terrible. They're not that bad. I definitely elevated my ability to just see how and understand how heel hooking works.
Yeah. So why not just go into the gym and work on heel hooks?
Yeah, I guess we were talking about that a little bit too the other day. I think heel hooking in the gym it's necessarily different than heel hooking outside, because so many times outside you're heel hooking just around a bulge, and maybe you get a small edge or a crystal or something on granite, but most of the time you're just around a corner squeezing
with it,
and figuring out how you use both legs to squeeze and how to put enough pressure on that heel that it will stay on essentially nothing.
So what you're saying is that heel hooking is not just draping your heel over a jug?
No. Throwing your heel around a Technic fat lip is not quite heel hooking. Or it is heel hooking. You're putting your heel on it, but that's one level of heel hooking, and definitely a level that is important to learn. But then as you progress, eventually heel hooks outside, and that might be even at a relatively easy level. Yeah. Stop being on holds and start being around corners. And that's something that's really hard to train in a gym.
Yeah. Just to kind of catch everybody up here who's listening, Peter and I and Nate have been having some really great conversations the last couple of days, and I haven't had a microphone on, and every single time I'm like, fuck, I wish I had a microphone on. So now I've got a microphone on.
He says that too every time.
Yeah, I do. And, and I'm pulling out my phone trying to record everything, and I don't have enough memory, so. But So now I'm turning a microphone on, and I'm gonna force Peter to recount some of these stories. So, and we're gonna get into some new territory, and we're just gonna go off here for a little while we're drinking coffee and trying to wake up. So, since we're on the topic of learning techniques, would you call yourself a solid V12 climber at this point? What would you call yourself as a solid climber, or do you?
I don't know. I don't really get into that so much.
Okay. Well, you've climbed some hard boulders. Let's just say that.
I've done a handful, I guess. Hard for me anyway.
Yeah.
Not so hard for other people. I mean, it's interesting.
But hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of boulders that
Give yourself some credit.
Lots of people can do faster than I can, and probably more than that will never do them, and that's just kind of the way it is. But that's the way it is at all levels. So
yeah,
that's cool. I don't know. I have a bunch of different theories that we've played around with in terms of like what makes you what level. We've played with, you can do X percent of boulders at that grade in like any style in a reasonable number of sessions. So call it 3 sessions or something like that. You're not sieging every single one to get it done, but you're also not flashing all of them. That would be unnecessary as well.
Sure.
We've played with, just you've flashed a couple levels below that. So, that's about the level that you're climbing.
I'm starting to get that you love these numbers and lists. And
lists are fun for sure.
Putting things into charts,
tick
sort of
lists,
thing.
charts. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of analytical in that way.
Yeah, I love seeing that stuff. I'm not as good at putting it together and breaking it down that way, but I love seeing it.
Yeah, I mean the like Japanese rating system is really interesting in this way because they borrowed it from not just martial arts. I think that's where way that people think about it, but they apply that same like Dan scale, and it's like
I didn't know that
Kaiyu or something for the amateur. So to other arts as well, like fine arts, like painting, to essentially describe levels of mastery, and so. Right around V7 is where they switch from like the amateur to master. So like if you are a quote unquote V7 climber, whatever scale you want to use, then you have you're essentially a single black belt in the sport of rock climbing. So, and then it progresses on to, I think it tops out right around like 6 Dan right now, would translate to V15. And they've added some pluses and minuses into that scale to kind of account for the different French grades and leave things a little bit open-ended. But it's interesting because they're rating, like that's something that's being used to describe like people and your level rather than being used to describe something else. So in martial arts, like they wouldn't describe some method of physical combat as being this hard. They would describe the person as having that level of mastery.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know they graded that way.
Well, I think they just borrowed it.
Gotcha.
And so there is more of a translation directly to the French, and by way of the French, the American rating system. Yep. So the pluses and minuses, I don't remember exactly where they line up in terms of the French grades and what all the breakdown is. But if you think about things like that, then you can think about what set of criteria, what like tests, if you will, boulders as tests or routes as tests, you like have to pass in order to achieve a certain level. In order to be able to say like I'm have this level of mastery. And so I think that is kind of influential in at least like my way of thinking in terms of like what level climber you are. So
the fact that that's cool. I didn't know about this grading scale at all, but I mean the Japanese seem to have it figured out, that's pretty damn cool. And that's one of the things I appreciate about the way you approach climbing is that you're not out there number chasing at all necessarily. I mean, sure, the numbers are a good goal to have, but you get just as psyched showing people around here at Devil's Lake. We've had a couple really good days out there, and you get just as psyched on easy problems, and I think that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, so long as they're good. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's sick. And I mean, it's been great having you around and getting to show you around. And I mean, what's more rewarding than having a local area that somebody's like, oh yeah, I'd come back. I'm psyched to come back.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
This
Like,
place
that's
is
the
cool.
coolest thing.
If you haven't been to Devil's Lake, you should definitely check this place out. It's a little extra warm and humid right now. It's what,
A lot extra
August.
warm and humid.
but I could see how this place would be amazing. The rock here is probably some of the best rock that I've ever touched. It's super hard, total bullet rock. Even though, like you said, the first day, even the worst problems here are on bullet rock. So you can't factor that into the star system. Like, if that was your way of rating a climb, how good the rock is, everything here would be 5 stars. I think that's pretty cool. Do you think you're spoiled by the rock quality here when you go other places?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just kind of like rock climbing. And it's
Does
fun to go to
that
different
rock
areas
quality
and-
play into what you want to try when you go elsewhere? Or are you like, okay, I just need to lower my standards and climb on anything?
I think I maybe notice that the rock quality other places is maybe not quite up to the same level, but you appreciate. Yeah, I mean, you look at the whole average. Like, I've climbed all over, and so the average rock quality is maybe lower than it is right here, but lots of problems all around have rock quality that's above average. Sure. And even like specific holes on specific problems that I can think about are like really like a step above. Mm-hmm. So
here's something interesting I think we could definitely dig into. This, and we haven't talked about this, so this will be an interesting conversation. And I won't be forcing you to dredge up things we've already talked about. So when I think of boulders, and I kind of, I think in levels of, there are boulders that are this level above me, and then there are boulders that are out in the fucking stratosphere that I'll never be at that level. When I think of those levels above me, a level or 2 or 3 even above me, you're definitely a guy I put in that category. But when I talked to you about bouldering initially, you were like, oh, I'm not really good at bouldering. Like, I haven't really dialed into bouldering yet. You still think of yourself as, a youth sport climber turned boulderer. And I didn't realize you'd only been bouldering for like 7 years or something. Like,
yeah, if that. I mean, not with any sort of like concerted dedication for more than, I guess we're coming up on 3.5 or so, maybe 3.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. So, because I think of you as a boulder, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because.
Well, and the whole time that we've known each other, I've
yeah,
bouldering.
And you take this cool approach to it. What are some of the things that you've, like, the mental switches you've made that you think are getting you closer to, like, being a master boulderer? That are different from climbing in the gym or being a youth climber or being a sport climber.
Sure. Well, I think that the reason I say that is really that trying really hard on single moves or single sequences is still pretty challenging for me. And I think that part of it is that there have been a couple times that I've really been able to try what I would consider to be 100%. And I say that realizing that I can probably try even harder. But that's just, I've felt like elevated beyond like my normal level of exertion a couple times. And I know that that's attainable, and I know what that feels like. And I know that when I go out climbing, it doesn't always feel like that.
Right. And we're not talking about, just because I've got people of all levels listening, we're not talking about leaving the gym and not being able to grip your steering wheel.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm talking about like a single move that takes an incredibly concentrated amount of effort.
Yeah.
And realizing that, like, okay, that what I thought I was doing when I was trying hard on a single move wasn't exactly what I thought. I'm really good at leaving the gym and not being able to grip your steering wheel for the record. Like,
and we all love
much
that.
better at that.
Yeah.
That it's almost like that's almost easier because it doesn't take as much
for sure
focus.
Yep.
But anyone who's ever campus boarded knows, you have to be like 100% focused through the entire movement, and it's strangely difficult to do.
Yeah.
It's really easy to think about how the campus rung feels in your hand. Oh, that feels a little worse than the last time I grabbed it, rather than, laser focus on the next move and exactly what you need to be doing.
Yeah. And I bet actually coming from like the youth climbing background, especially sport climbing, I bet it's even harder because you're used to routes that build up as they go. So you get that sort of Red River style, like you get to get in the flow of it before you have to try a hard move somewhere up high.
Definitely.
I definitely struggle with that. That's the tough transition to bouldering for me, is that it's hard for me to pull off the ground and explode. Like, I want to climb 80 feet before I have to try hard.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're climbing 80 feet and trying hard, I mean, realistically,
how hard is that?
off a bolt, it can't be hard
right.
if you have a shot at doing it. There's no way. It's physically impossible, or hard for you, right?
Yeah.
No one can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not hard for them if they can do that.
Yeah, at that point, you don't have 100% to give.
Exactly. No matter how easy the 80 feet is. So
yeah.
So that type of like really concentrated effort, I think Chris Schulte has written about it, kind of influentially for me anyway. I think he probably wrote a paragraph and wrote it off, but yeah, I mean, he's articulated it probably better than anyone else that I've read or listened to.
For sure. And I think that's kind of the crux for a lot of people bouldering, is connecting with that ability to try to zero in on that moment of pure focus and pure effort. And that's what these workshops
really
we're out
cool
here doing
feeling.
are about, right?
But
figuring that out.
It's not easy. So at least we have these guys telling us how to do it. So that's good. We'll learn.
Did you think you had reached that, and then later on down the road you realize you hadn't reached it? Or is it something that you weren't even aware you were trying to get to early on?
Yeah, I think I wasn't even aware.
Yeah.
I think I kind of had in my head that I can take like kind of more of, I guess I'd call it like a sport climber's approach to bouldering. And I mean, a friend of mine was giving me a hard time about this over the summer. We were climbing together and he's like, oh, you're taking like such a sport climber's approach. Like you've done all the moves, you can do it, just do it. And I'm like, oh, well, I should do some overlapping links. Yeah. And he was like, dude, just send it. And like, sure enough, like you'd go out and send it. And so it's cool to be like, all right, well, it's just a little bit of a different approach. And I think I've always kind of fallen back into like what I'm comfortable with, which is, doing some overlapping links, getting tired, having it feel good, and then doing it. But the really hard moves are never going to feel like really good. It's just going to feel hard. You're going to have to try really hard every single time.
Yep.
And another friend of mine was saying that was like his favorite part about a problem that he did, I guess, a few seasons ago now, but like it never felt easy. He always had to try hard.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing that even when you get that in sport climbing, it's I had to try hard battling the pump. It's not
exactly
like we were talking about. It's not giving pure effort on a move or two.
Yeah, it's like don't give in.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let go instead of try really hard.
And I mean, don't let go is oversimplifying it. It's climbing with like as well as you can while
in the
really
red.
tired.
That's not oversimplifying it.
Sure. But keeping your technique together and staying calm and staying focused and not panicking because you start getting pumped and that type of thing as well.
Yeah. How did you kind of come across the process? Like, did you watch other boulders, see what they were doing? Is it just something you fell into naturally?
No, I mean, like I said, I think I like fall back into my what I learned from people back sport climbing, I don't know, 10 years ago. Maybe I think that was probably like my last sport route, but I guess more recently it's been friends of mine scolding me, and
that's
so
good to have.
It's definitely good to have. It's helpful because someone might give you, it doesn't seem like you're pulling hard enough with your right foot, but like that's one piece of beta. But a different piece of beta might be, you just need to fire this thing right now.
Sure.
right? And that's beta in the same way. It's beta on your approach, on your like how you're going about it,
Yeah,
on your quote process or whatever people say these days.
Yeah, I'm getting better at feeling that I'm not trying hard. That was hard for me to realize. And even though I've spent quite a bit of time working on learning to try hard, I still, like you said, I go right back into like, let's relax as much as possible on this move. Even though I'm only doing 4 total moves, for some reason I want to be as relaxed as possible.
Sure.
I want to look like Francois instead of looking like Chris Sharma for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's tough too, knowing when to differentiate the two. Dave McLeod writes on how in a session when you're working a high limit boulder, how you shouldn't be trying your absolute max until you know what you're doing. So the idea of breaking down moves, but I think for a lot of people, I know from myself especially, like knowing when to go from, oh, I think I can make this move feel a little bit better, or this move, going from that to switching to, okay, I'm going to turn everything off and just try hard. Like that for me, and I know for a lot of people, it's a hard transition to make.
Yeah. How do you know? Like, what are there any things that you...
Someone tells me, hey man, just fire this thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
that's definitely a piece of it. I don't know. It's challenging because you get to a point where, you can keep on just messing with it, right? Like you're futzing with it instead of just trying hard. And I think you're trying to futz with hard things until they feel a little easier, rather than maybe what you need to do is just turn it on a little bit.
And sometimes
that's something I battle with.
Sometimes it's even kind of a safe zone to get into. Be like, oh, I'll just keep working this out and figuring this out. And without realizing, it might even be your way of avoiding, the hard task of like, okay, I need to just like try this from the start, like
just
grit my
step up.
teeth and get after it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And I saw it in the gym the other night, and I think in the early stages of this, like learning to try hard, I think one of the common things people come across is like latching holds on big moves,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's tough for me, especially on my right side now. I have to kind of warm up into latching big giant moves. But I was working with a girl the other night in the gym, and she wasn't even getting to the hold at first. And once we started getting her to the hold, she just kept slapping at it. Like, I'm like, you could get 3 inches above that hold easy. And you're just like laying your hand on it and then letting go. And I think once you get to that point where you're getting to the hold, that's when you need to start really saying, okay, I have to focus on that moment, really, really work on just latching that hold and trying really hard for that second to hold the swing or whatever it is that's happening. I think that's a really common way to ease into this how to try hard thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like everything else, there are different levels of it, right? Like it's a different level of awareness. And the trick is, or at least for me, is like once you've glimpsed that next level, then you're much more aware of when you're not in that mode.
Yeah. For me, oftentimes it's how hard am I holding something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I want, like I said, I want to be relaxed, open-handed. I want to be giving as little effort as possible to a hold. And I really like climbing on this quartzite out here and on, the granite up in Colorado, because it forces me to hold on instead of just letting my skin do the work like I can do with the red,
Sure.
So I think that's something really important too. How much are you relaxing on these little holds and then just slapping to the next hold? Like, or are you really bearing down?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool you just connected the dots between like here and like an alpine area in Colorado, like the Nice out west, because that's something that like, I've noticed too, that it's not that dissimilar. Similar shapes, similar texture. I mean, there's a little more texture on the Nice, but not that much.
Yeah.
Depending on how traveled it is, but I definitely think that there's, it's just hard rock.
That's one of the things I thought when I first climbed here with you the other day was that's one of the reasons you're so good at that you can go out west and do your hardest problems out there, because this rock, I think, really sets you up for that. This kind of slippery, you really have to keep tension, you really have to bear down kind of climbing get you really prepared for that kind of climbing out there.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it shapes you as a climber. It shapes what, like, wherever you're climbing is going to change what you want, because you want to perform well. So you figure out the things that are going to help you perform well, and then you start to work on those things a little bit, and pretty soon you have what people would call their style.
Yep.
And then, you know, then that builds, and then you want to do an even harder problem or route on, you know, in your area, and then you get even better, and now your style's even more defined. I think that's pretty cool. And then you go other places where the style's sort of similar, and you do a little better, and you go places where the style's a little different, and maybe you do a little worse, but that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's good to learn all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were talking earlier, and I think this was a really cool conversation, so I kind of want to bring it back up, and especially in the style aspect, because we hadn't really talked about that. We talked a little about, you know, Jimmy and Adam Ondra and why they're so good at on-sighting or flashing, and how that works. And you guys, you and Nate both overlapped the two in a really cool way. And I think style plays into that. Like they've spent some time on other styles, so they kind of know what to expect, and that becomes part of their visualization, or their setting up a simulator or whatever. So why don't you tell me your theory about why Adam Ondra's so fucking good at on-sighting? And it looks like he's climbed the route 100 times already.
Yeah, I mean, this is all speculation. I don't really know anything about Adam's process, or, you know, what he does. Yeah, he screams a lot, and he tries really hard, and he wants it more than almost anyone else that I've ever seen. Sure. And that's obvious even from any video. But my little theory, and I guess this was implanted by maybe the first coach or mentor that I had in climbing, is this idea of visualizing not just, you know, the sequence of hands and feet, but also, you know, what it feels like to climb the moves. And that takes a really high awareness of rock climbing to be able to feel the positions without being on the wall. And you see people trying to feel out positions, and that's something that we were talking about trying to do even ourselves, like feel out where the best position is. But you take a guy like Adam, and it seems like he can just know by intuition what it's going to feel like to be there. And it seems to me that it doesn't just look like he's climbed the route 100 times. He already has climbed the route 100 times. Yeah. It's just all in his head. He's already felt through the entire route. He's so in tune with his body and in tune with how he fits into each position that probably already... Yeah, he's already done it. He's already done it in his head. Yep. And that's a really special thing to watch. And I know the Il Domini video, and you brought up the Golden Ticket video, where he can just fly through things because he just knows what it feels like. Yeah, there's no figuring out anymore. Exactly. He's figured it all out. He's felt all the positions. You know, when you go into a gym or you're working on a boulder or a route or whatever, and you it's amazing that, and we all experience this at all levels, that if you try a move, it feels impossible. You know, 5 tries later, you're doing the move every time. It's not because you got stronger in 5 tries. It's because you learned it. Your body learned those positions, and you can just go into those positions every time now. Adam does that. You know, he feels his way through mentally, and he can sense what it's going to be like, so he goes through that without actually having to try the move. And I mean, Nate was talking about you know, what, Jimmy kind of taking that maybe to the next level, where he can watch things, maybe a video, understand what it's going to feel like to do it, and then create some sort of simulator in the gym that mirrors those feelings, and then be really close to reality, which is pretty cool, because most of us, or at least we had this conversation the other day. We watched a video, and it's so hard to tell what's going on from that video. It's so hard to tell what it's actually like from watching the video. And it was a little grainy video, but still, that's to Jimmy's credit, being able to do that is showing an incredibly high understanding of rock climbing rock climbing movement.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in his pinch strength, but there's something else going on there that makes his climbing
sure.
so special.
Yeah.
And you look at how many climbs that both of those guys have done. I think Jimmy's done like over 900 double-digit boulders at this point, 130 being flashes.
Yeah, at least.
And same thing with Adam. I mean, was it just like 2-3 years ago he had done his 100th 9A and harder?
Yeah.
So I mean
That's
kind
crazy.
of volume. And man, having climbed around Jimmy, that guy, he literally climbs everything around him. Like, it doesn't matter if it's some super bunchy crimp boulder, which actually, if anything, he's more attracted to those because the things that are hard for him, he goes after even harder. And it shows because now he can climb such a broad variety of moves and he understands them so well. It's super impressive.
Slots
Yeah.
into those positions quickly, sometimes in just one try. Often in just one try.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's really important that you brought that up because having that library of moves at your disposal, having all those tricks in your bag that you can employ at will whenever you want to is a huge part of it. You're not going to go out at your first time climbing outside and be able to do what Jimmy and Adam do.
No, of course
no way.
not.
You have to spend a lot of time building up that bag of tricks that you've got.
To get pretty good for you.
Yeah.
It's very likely that never at that level.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
They're really in like a totally different
Oh, yeah,
realm of
absolutely.
understanding.
They're
but
way out in the stratosphere.
But
so.
that doesn't mean you can't look at them and kind of see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And use a little bit of that to try to elevate your own climbing to whatever level you're looking to reach. And that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so cool, right? Like we were saying that too earlier, that climbing's special in that you can have a really similar experience at all of these different levels and relate to another climber and their experience, regardless of what level it's at.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and we
it
get to
changed a
see
little.
videos of these dudes regularly.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's fucking cool. That like Jimmy's Rockland's
Yeah,
first
his
try
flash,
video
yeah.
is one of the most impressive things I've ever watched, and I've watched it over and over. And I'm not like I'm not a climbing porn watcher. I don't just go watch a bunch of videos like I think both of you guys do. You guys are insane. But I
watched a
love
few.
that video because if you really watch Jimmy, if you don't just watch it for the climbing porn side of it, if you really watch what he's doing, his hand goes into position as he's leaving a hold to grab the next hold. Like he's grabbed that hold 100 times and knows exactly the position his fingers need to be in because he has in his, he's done it with his body without ever touching the rock over and over and over. And like Nate said, he sets simulators and you said he's like unnaturally good at coming up with the simulator, not having ever tried the problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just understands that geometry so well that he can put it together that way. And I think that's super important to watch those videos, not just as climbing porn. If you take everything into account, like Adam, that's his first try on Golden Ticket. Watch how well he climbs it, or watch how well Jimmy does all these boulders. Watching him flash sky is crazy to me. Those moves look so complicated, but they look like he's done them 100 times. That's crazy.
Yeah, his body's right in the right position.
Yeah,
It's cool.
yeah.
It's definitely cool.
So, talk to me about The Shining. That was your big goal
Oh, yeah.
last year, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Problem, pretty far up in chaos. Actually, a Jimmy Boulder. So here
Yeah.
we go. I did the transition for you.
Yeah. Nice.
Um,
I like it. You got
yeah.
a job. You're hired.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm getting the hang of this now. It's this weird mic thing.
What caused you to want to go out like to the furthest flung bouldering in Rocky Mountain National Park?
Oh, I don't know. It's fun.
That's one
I
of
don't
the
know. I think it's just part of my personality. Like, I can't explain that shit.
that's one of the
Like,
highest hard boulders in the U.S., right? Or am I
yeah,
totally
no,
wrong
I
with
mean,
that?
it's got to be like I think Lincoln's all higher, and there might be some other stuff at Evans, but honestly, it's all kind of semantic once you're above 10,000 feet.
Sure,
like,
sure.
You're not going, like, the elevation isn't really materially different in terms of like oxygen level in the air or anything like that.
Gotcha. But
At any level that people are climbing at.
But you're a Midwestern dude.
I am a Midwestern dude.
Yeah.
Um,
So what makes you want to dig into that process so much that can be so fucking frustrating?
yeah, it can. Especially on that
at a
one.
place that's relatively difficult to get to.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but it all seems to like add to the experience to me. Like I've never been that attracted to like roadside projects and stuff like that. I don't know.
Love roadside projects.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I wish I loved roadside projects. Like they're so easy to try. It's awesome. But it just doesn't seem to quite do it for me. Maybe I need to be doing something different than everyone else, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, that boulder's really cool though, but it can be frustrating. There's anyone who's familiar with it know there's the one hole that just seeps all the time, and I think basically everyone who's logged it on like any logging site has said like, "Oh, so glad to not battle conditions on this," or "So glad that I got lucky on with conditions," and all of that, because it'll be dry and then it'll be wet for weeks, and then it'll be dry and then it'll be wet again. So.
It sounds like you like being frustrated. I don't know.
It's interesting because like we had a conversation, like some friends of mine and I this summer, beginning of the summer, and we had a conversation about like what proportion of your harder problems had you spent a decent amount of time trying. Like we said like 5 days counted as a decent amount, and I wouldn't consider that a long project at all. And I know. Like Nale's talked about like, oh, you spent 12 days, 15 days on something, like you didn't do anything. Right. Which is, you're definitely getting up there if you're devoting 15 days to doing something. I mean, you've definitely gotten frustrated if you've spent 15 days doing something.
Yeah, I've seen people get frustrated after 15 minutes.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that person after 15 days.
Right.
Well, that they're not still going to that boulder. And I think that's Nale's point when he talked about that.
Yeah.
But like I've done a lot of other problems like pretty quickly, and in fact I don't think I've done that many boulders in more than 5 days or 5 or more days. In fact, I don't think I've done very many boulders in 3 or more days. It seems to be a 1 or 2 session type of thing for me. And kind of toward the end of last summer, I was looking for a little bit of a different experience, having done some stuff faster, and wanted to challenge myself. Not even like challenge myself to climb like a physically harder problem, but challenge myself to stick with it.
Yeah.
Through a problem that was going to take me a little bit longer. And realistically, probably not just more days of effort, but also maybe some more focused preparation or something like that. Like that I have to like actually elevate myself, wanting to do this, wanting to do a boulder. And yeah, I think sticking with it across a few days in a season is maybe relatively easy. Like it's not that hard to physically get better at something, but staying focused and willing to keep on trying is something that I've definitely admired in other climbers, and maybe something that I haven't been as good at historically. So
I think the hard part of it for people is willing to risk not doing it.
Yeah, that's 100% part of it, especially when there are things that are far from home.
Yeah, and it's things that are out of your control a little bit.
Yep.
Like it's not just are you strong enough? It's is everything going to line up and allow this to work for me?
Yeah, I mean, and especially once you get to a stage in your climbing where you start to obsess with things like skin and conditions and whatnot. I mean, I remember maybe like when I was blissfully ignorant of all of these things, where like you just go climbing in the red and it was 95 degrees and it didn't matter, and the route was in the sun, but like you were psyched, so you went climbing, and like that was cool. And now, I mean, like cut that in half, and like my skin sucks, and like all this, I'm so greasy today, You start to like obsess over those details that, I mean, they matter, right? Like I'm not saying they don't matter. They matter a lot. Otherwise you wouldn't obsess over them.
For sure.
But like all of those things can like kind of feel like they're conspiring against you.
Where does your, I'm just curious here, where does your level of obsession lie with that stuff? Because when I have friends who don't believe in conditions at all. They're just like, conditions don't matter. And when I go out west, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It's humid. My fucking lips are cracking.
Yeah.
But then I find myself in like 3 days going, oh, it's humid today, and it's like 20% humidity. And I don't think the red's seen a day under 60, in its entire existence.
Sure.
So my level of obsession with that stuff changes pretty fast. Does yours do the same, or do you keep this Midwest like, oh, humidity is just part of it kind of attitude?
Yeah, I think I was not very, like, it's kind of like a graph or something over the course of the years that I've been climbing. I think like when I was much younger, I didn't care at all.
Or back to those
I
graphs
didn't
and
even
charts and
know.
numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I got to put it in a chart. Otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Like in the early days, you don't really know what that is. You're like I was like a competitive swimmer and climbing at the same time as a kid, and like of course your skin's like totally oozing, and now you've got guys wearing gloves in the shower and shit. So like yeah, exactly. So like let alone going and doing a full swimming workout. So like not really caring very much then, and then like over time, maybe like probably around the time that I started bouldering more seriously, becoming more and more and more and more obsessed. And then over the last year, I definitely managed to climb some boulders in conditions that I would never have thought that I could climb those boulders. So like I was climbing the southeast in, the middle of March bouldering, and highs in the low 80s. And
did your car break down out there and you got stuck? Is that why you were there?
No. What actually happened was we were there in February, and for just a little bit, I didn't really have any real goals, but I ended up trying a problem that I've kind of always wanted to do on like the very last day and like the last half hour, just to see like, oh yeah, maybe I'll try to do this next year.
Yeah.
I think this is a pattern with me. And I was like, basically I got home and I was like, oh God. You're just obsessing over it because like you can do it, and you should have tried it much sooner.
Yeah.
And I basically drove back down for 2 days to do it, like a week later for the weekend. And so that's how I ended up back there. But
obsession.
Yeah, obsession, and big believer in following the psych. Like if you got the psych and you can do it right now, do it, because you don't know when that's going to change, and then you'll look back and you'll think, oh, like I was fit enough to do it then. I didn't do it. I mean, psych on climbing, psych on different things within climbing, psych on things outside of climbing. And, life takes all sorts of twists and turns, and you don't know exactly when you'll get another shot. So take your shot. Yeah. So that was kind of my philosophy there. It's like, yeah, it's 20 hours in the car, but it's also a boulder that I've always wanted to do. And, so, but anyway, this is kind of a diatribe, which I seem to do, but
that's why we're here.
Exactly. We're having a conversation.
This is going to be called diatribes.
We're having, exactly. We're having a diatribization. But I think that doing stuff like that, where there are highs in the 80s and you are climbing at a level that you never would have thought that you could climb when highs were in the 80s, ever, like not in a million years. If you had asked me 6 months or even 6 or 7 months ago, I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Like I can't do that. No one can do that.
Right.
Like you have to be Jimmy Webb to do that, or something.
Yeah.
And then you do that a couple of times and you start to maybe realize that your window of acceptable conditions on problems that are at a reasonable range for you, maybe higher, like more difficult than you'd realized, is pretty good. So, I've climbed problems that are relatively hard for me in 15 degrees Fahrenheit up to, highs in the 80s Fahrenheit, same level problem. And so that's like a pretty wide range. And so I guess anything in between is fair game on those. Nice. Just like kind of, it might be harder, but you can still get it done.
Yeah. So, and I think that's important to explore for people of all levels, because one of the things that really irks me about specifically the Cincinnati scene. I'm only talking about that. So all you Cincinnati people, perk up here. I'm talking about you. A lot of people watch what I might do as far as my seasons go in the red. And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not climbing in the summer in the red. But what they don't see is that I spent 10 summers climbing in the red, and climbing everything I could climb in those conditions. So now I'm just out of things I could go try in the summer, and I still do go when the conditions are fairly bad. But I think if you only go out when you deem the conditions to be perfect, then you're really shortcutting your learning, number one, and you're going to get a 10th done of what you actually could get done.
Yeah, and realistically, most people don't have the luxury of only climbing when the conditions are perfect. Like, the vast, vast, vast majority of climbers have
you get your
time
window and
off
you gotta
work.
go. Yep.
They go on vacation. They go climbing, and like if the conditions just are whatever they are, and I guess realizing that I can get more done than I had thought is definitely it opens up possibilities, because you stop looking at weather and being like discouraged already, like before you even try.
Yep.
Which is really easy to do.
Puts a ton of pressure on things too. If you're like, I mean, man, living in the Southeast for the last 9 years, I can tell you, man, this last winter we only had about 2 like great weeks of weather. I had a buddy who moved to Chattanooga last summer, and once the season ended in March, he was just like, man, I could have just traveled here from Boston for 2 weeks and I would have gotten the best part of the season. And, I wouldn't have missed out on anything really. And so, if you're sitting around waiting for ideal weather the whole time, man, you're putting a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on yourself. Maybe not if you live out west, because the weather's always great. And I don't even care.
But even
about
out
you
there, they
anyways.
complain. They're like, oh, there's 2 extra degrees of humidity. I'm like, fuck, go rock climbing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. Like, so anyway, like The Shining, like I fell off at the very, very end when this seeping hold was dry, and ended up having to climb it with this seeping hold a little damp.
Did you beat yourself up at all when you fell out of it dry? Were you like, that was my shot and I blew it?
Yeah, a bit. And my friends will tell you that I was kind of like, it was definitely stressful, especially the day that I went back and found it wet after falling off of the end of it dry, before realizing, oh, I can climb it if it's a little damp. Like, it's okay. Like, it's harder for sure. There's no doubt. But like, I can basically get it dry enough that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Chalk a towel, whatever. But like, you can get it dry enough, pull on, and do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny in retrospect, because we were talking about the Legend the other day, which was my first 513 at all in the red, and that hold, there's a seeping hold on that too. Yep. So I guess I just need hard seeping things for anytime I want to push my limit a little bit.
Well, if you want to try something that doesn't seep, just let me know and I'll go up with a spray bottle and wet it down for you.
There you go. Yeah. That way I'll get the full experience.
Make you try a little fucking harder.
Yeah.
Because you don't try hard enough.
No, well, exactly. I need those 2 moments again. But
no, I think
cool.
it's important to be able to make that mind switch, man. Like, if you don't ever climb in bad conditions, how do you know what you can do in bad conditions? You can look at that hold and be like, I've climbed in, at Devil's Lake, Wisconsin in the middle of the fucking summer and done hard moves. So it's not going to feel that bad when I get up there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's pretty low, and it was, I mean, I'm not saying it was dripping wet, but
Sure.
I mean, it was damp, for sure. And you'd have to then climb the rest of the problem with the fingertips a little damp. But everyone says it's a real battle against conditions, and it definitely seems like people congregate around little windows on that one. And we were talking about everyone else who's done it. Like, I've climbed on it. A few friends of mine and I were joking around that basically climbed on it with the vast majority of people who've done it.
Yeah.
So just kind of waiting my turn. And
I bet you every single one of those people who are up there battling conditions on that thing have climbed in a lot in really poor conditions.
Oh yeah.
So I think the big
they've all climbed a lot, period.
Yeah.
And definitely in bad conditions.
Yeah. And I think the takeaway is for those people who are learning to boulder, who aspire to boulder at that level, when you hear those people saying, I'm just waiting for the right weather window or whatever, I'm waiting for good conditions, that doesn't mean you should wait for conditions, because they've spent a lot of fucking days not waiting for conditions.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a huge difference between climbing something at like your absolute limit, and you really need good conditions and good skin, and climbing something that's maybe 75 or 80% of your limit.
Yeah, and a lot of us have seen the video of Jimmy and Daniel out with Nolly checking out the Lapnor project. In horrible conditions. We've all seen that. Those guys didn't sit in the gym and go, well, I really want to check that out, but the conditions suck today, so we're not going to go look at it. So
yeah, but if they were trying to send it, maybe,
right?
Yeah, like right. Nale might just choose to save his skin. So it's like a push and pull, and like what you want to do. But you can definitely climb things, and I can definitely climb things in bad conditions, and
you might have to drop your expectations a little bit.
Exactly, just lower down a couple grades, and then
I think too you can also kind of play around with the styles of boulders. Like if you were going to go climb on a roof that's like a power endurance climb, it's going to naturally have slightly larger holds. So you're going to have, you don't have to have the best of conditions versus if you're trying like a 2-move crimp problem.
All my boulders have slightly larger holds.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Mine too.
This is why Chris doesn't care about conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, if something gets all day sun, you're going to want it to be cold versus, if you're climbing on a roof that gets shade and wind all day long, then you can definitely plan accordingly.
Yep, for sure. You can always just go climb off-width, because off-width is easy. Shit, no matter what.
You definitely don't need good conditions to stick your feet above your head or something. Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Cool. Well, I think we can wrap this thing up. So
cool.
I appreciate you. First off, I appreciate you guys having us out here, man.
Yeah, of course.
I love the Midwest and the little old gyms in the Midwest, and people just love to fucking try hard here. So
yeah, it's cool. It's a good scene. People should come by.
Yeah, thanks for letting me force you to sit down over coffee and whatever the hell that sparkling water you're drinking is.
Yeah, I don't know. This one's lime. It's pretty good.
All right,
it's not the best, but it's good.
Cool. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm fairly sure that next time I talk to Peter, he's going to tell me that he's not a legend. I'm sure that's already in his head. He probably turned the podcast off as soon as I said that, because he's a humble guy. But he's a badass, and I appreciate him being willing to say, I was heel hooking all wrong. I still had to figure it out. And I think, I've worked with 5'11" climbers who are like, I know how to heel hook. What are you talking about? So check your egos. Check them at the door. I think that's the best way to get better at rock climbing. Admit that you don't know everything. Even the best climbers out there can still learn from a focused, intentional practice. So if you are in Virginia, please come and see us. Alexandria, Sport Rock. We'll be there next week. I'll also be at Collegiate Nationals in Houston, emceeing for USA Climbing. Pretty excited to check out that comp. I've never even seen it. I'm really stoked for my first time to be on the mic. In the meantime, you know where to find us. PowerCompanyClimbing.com, at Power Company Climbing on the Instagrams, on the Facebooks, on the Pinterests, which I still don't know a damn thing about it, but now it's going to be Lana's job. So thanks for that, Lana. And you can look for us on the Twitter, but that's never going to be Lana's job because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power. This time to build power. This time the building.